What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about another Detroit Lions draft pick. And today, we're going to be talking about a draft pick that the Detroit Lions traded up to make in the 2021 NFL Draft. So let's get it started.
We're going to bite a kneecap off, and we're going to stand up, and then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down. And on the way up, we're going to take your other kneecap, and we're going to get up, and then it's going to take 3 shots to get us down. And when we do, we're going to take another hunk out of you. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
Yeah! He's a goat! Oh, there's nobody! Welcome, everybody, to the video. Glad you guys are here. Hopefully, you guys are having a great day. And today, we're talking about another draft pick, the Detroit Lions, breaking down another draft pick from the Detroit Lions. And this draft pick was pretty cool because the Lions traded up from pick number 153 all the way to pick number 113 with the Cleveland Browns. 40 spots to move up in the 4th round from the 5th round to select the linebacker out of Purdue, Derrick Barnes. First thing, kind of my initial takeaways just from the trade alone before we even get into the player, is I do like the fact that the Detroit Lions were clearly identifying certain players that they wanted, and they made sure they went and got them. Okay, there was talks that the Lions could trade up for Levi. Here they traded for Derrick Barnes. I do like the fact that the Lions had their eye on a player. They weren't just waiting and say, okay, here's who's there, we're just going to take him because that's what's available. Like, no, there were certain guys that they loved in this class, and they went out and got them. Okay, so, sometimes it doesn't come back that it was the best trade, but you do like the fact that they clearly had a vision of what kind of player that they wanted, who they wanted, and they did what they could to go get him. Now, this was really cool because we had back-to-back picks. The only issue was we had to wait from pick number 113 all the way to 257 for our next pick, which was just crazy. I mean, it was like 140 picks before the Detroit Lions were back on the clock, and they take forever in the draft. Some of you guys were there when we waited that break. That was a long break. Appreciate all you guys in there. It was really fun, but it was a long break. The Detroit Lions made us wait. But at the end of the day, they gave up a 2022 4th round pick. They gave up their 5th round pick to move up to the 4th round, but they also got a 7th round pick in return. So I guess, hey, we still got 7 draft picks in the draft, and we moved up. So I guess it kind of worked itself out. Obviously, the 7th round pick was who we talked about in our last draft video, and that was Jermar Jefferson out of Oregon State. But today, we're talking about a linebacker, Derrick Barnes. Now linebackers were kind of just flying off the board when the Detroit Lions decided to trade up. I mean, they were sitting there with pick number 112 and pick number 153 heading into that day. And if the Detroit Lions would have waited to 153, there's a very good chance this linebacker would have been gone, because at that point, there was only a few really inside linebackers that could help you day one, at least my opinion on what was there. I mean, guys like Cam McGrone, maybe, but the Detroit Lions definitely had to make something happen if they were going to get one of those guys, and they did. They didn't hold back, and they traded up, and they made it happen. So now Derrick Barnes is a Detroit Lion with pick number 113 in the 2021 NFL Draft. So today, we're going to talk a little bit about Derrick Barnes, break down the strengths, the weaknesses of his game, feel like his role could be for the Detroit Lions, dive into the stats a little bit, the pro day, kind of all of it. All right, so let's just get right into it. Let's start off with a quick little background. Derrick Barnes is a 6 foot, 238 pound linebacker out of Purdue, a 4-year player that back in high school was actually a running back. He played defense too, but he was actually a running back. He was a return man. He also played defense. He actually committed initially to Toledo, and at the last second, he decided to actually go to Purdue. So he could have been a Toledo Rocket, which would have been kind of cool, but he decided to go to Purdue instead. And at Purdue, he was productive pretty much every single season, even going back to 2018, where he had 92 total tackles, 3 sacks, 8 tackles for loss. Then you move ahead to 2019, he played the edge or the defensive end position, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But yes, I don't know exactly what his size was at that time, but it looked pretty similar, and he was holding it down. The guy had 7.5 sacks, 11 tackles for loss, and 63 total tackles. And then last season, Purdue decided to move him to the off-ball linebacker position. And in 6 games played, he had 54 total tackles, which means he averaged about 9 tackles per game. To put that into perspective, Micah Parsons averaged a little over 8 tackles per game, like 8.5 tackles per game. So, I mean, obviously, he was racking up the production with Purdue. He also had 1 interception and 5 tackles for loss. So, yes, the stats were definitely there for Derrick Barnes. Then you head to the pro day, and the pro day worked wonders for him. It really did. He ran a 4.57 40-yard time, which was one of the best for any linebacker in the country for the pro day. He also had 34-inch arms, which is huge, and we'll get into that. Again, he came out 6 foot, 238, and he had 29 bench press reps. 29 bench press reps of 225 at 238 pounds. That is huge. I mean, it was way up there in terms of linebackers, and he's not the biggest linebacker in this class. So that was just outstanding, and you see it on film. That's the great thing. It's not just a pro day number, you see it on the tape as well. So let's get into some of this Derrick Barnes talk. Let's break it down a little bit. Let's start off with the first category, and this is run defense, and this is a part of his game that I think is going to be the most impactful early in his career for the Detroit Lions. I think there's other parts that need development, but I think run defense is where we'll see him the most early in his career as an early down player, okay? Some of those obvious passing downs, third downs, things like that, he may not always be on the field there, but I think early downs, like Dan Campbell said, playing the Mike linebacker position, playing downhill is where he's at his best. That's where we're going to see him on the field. All right, that's where we're going to see him early in his career, is stopping the run. And there's a couple of traits here that are almost uncoachable, but there's also a lot of development. Really became the full off-ball linebacker in 2020 last season. So it's relatively new to him. He's still learning a lot of things, and you can see that he's got a lot of things to clean up. But like I said, there's also a couple of traits here that you really can't teach. So let's start off with the good first, and then we'll get into things that I think needs improvement. The first thing that I think is really good, and there's really a combination here of two things, but it's the length first. 34-inch arms on his pro day, but it shows up on film. That's a good thing. You don't just have length, but it also shows up on film, and it's actually one of the biggest strengths because it's uncoachable. You can't make a guy's arms longer. I don't know. Maybe you can stretch a lot. I don't know. But regardless, his length definitely shows up as a run defender. When you watch him, his ability to disengage from blocks mainly stems from his length. It really does. He's able to kind of just put his arms in the chest of a blocker, get a lot of separation between him and whoever that blocker is, and it allows him to work off. He can put one arm on him and you reach out with his other arm. He can cover a lot of space because of his long arm length. If he's out of position as a run defender, he can kind of reach out and just grab on and latch onto ball carriers, whoever has the football. His length is one of the biggest strengths in his game as a whole, and it shows up as a pass rusher, shows up in coverage, and we'll get to those two things. But as a run defender, it's huge. But then you combine that with his power. And this guy is extremely strong. 29 bench press reps at 238 pounds is, it's outstanding. It really is. But then you watch him on film and you're blown away with how much power this guy and how big of blows this guy can actually land on offensive linemen, tackles, guards. He can throw these guys off their feet. He can make them lose balance. He's got a lot of power. And again, that combined with length, when you're talking about disengaging from blocks as a run defender, that combination is lethal. It really is, and it makes him productive. It gives him opportunities to make plays, and ball carriers aren't going to be running out of his arm tackles very often. Now, the good thing is he's a good, well-disciplined tackler. Very fundamentally sound, breaks down. You don't see him out of control throwing his body at people. Breaks down as a tackler. Doesn't miss many tackles. You can look at the statistics. He did have a few, like all linebackers do, but for the most part, very clean there. So technically, you're not going to see him, out here throwing his self out, just not even looking at who he's tackling, and then it's going to be a mess. You're not going to see that. He's polished in that regard. And then the length and the power combination is honestly just lethal, and they're just kind of two uncoachable things. And then you combine that with the top speed. Now, he ran a 4.57 40, and this may not come as a big surprise, but that is the fastest 40 of any linebacker on our team. I don't know what Devontae Beckett ran, though, so I'd have to check into that. But any linebacker on the team, no one ran that fast of a 40. I guess that's not a huge surprise considering how slow our linebackers have looked. It's great, and it helps him run down things. You put him on the edge, he can run down things from behind. He can catch up to plays that maybe he was out of position, or, if he's on the complete opposite side of the field, he can run down things. His motor is always running. He brings an unmatched energy to the game. Every play, this guy's playing at 100%. I don't see him take plays off. So all of that is great. But there is a little part within that 40-yard dash time that people miss, and that's the 10-yard split. His 10-yard split was extremely slow, 1.7 seconds. I know just, little like tenths of a second can really change that, but you can see it. I think there is lacking some burst here as the run defender, but there is the top-end speed. Strength and length allows him to take on offensive linemen at the second level. Now, we'll get to a little bit more of that in a second, but usually when you're talking about, guys that can, play in that two-gap system, you got to get these big linebackers like your Tavais that are 260, super long, because they're just big guys. The thing is, he brings that in a 240-pound body at 6 foot tall because of his uncanny arm length with his size, and also because of his strength. This guy is so strong. So he's able to do that while also having the athleticism side. So it gives him versatility. He's not just, hey, he can't play in a two-gapping scheme because he can't hold up blockers. He can do it. He can, fill gaps and fill lanes still while getting blocked at the second level because he's so long and strong. It doesn't match his size. It's not right for his height and weight. It doesn't match up. There's a lot of traits that he brings as a run defender. But now let's get into the concerns as a run defender because, like I said, as many great traits as he has, he's still relatively new to this. And we're talking specifically more as a Mike linebacker. We'll talk a little bit as, an edge defender as well when he did that. But there's definitely a lot of things that could be cleaned up. The first thing is he's an impatient linebacker. All right. There's a lot of times when you watch him on film where he kind of just, as soon as the play starts, wherever he thinks the ball's going, he's selling out to get there. And you love the energy. He brings it every play, but that puts him out of position a lot. And when you're impatient like that as a linebacker, you can take yourself out of the play and it can open up gaps. Sometimes you have responsibility to cover a certain gap and it's fine. But other times when it calls for being patient, kind of seeping your way through those offensive linemen to catch up to the running back to make a play on the runner, then he can get out of position because he is very impatient as a linebacker. And I think that's something that comes with time, getting comfortable with the position. Right now he's playing at 100 miles per hour every second, and that's fine, but you just kind of have to slow him down a little bit. Like, hey, wait a minute on those. We'll just calm down on those. He's great as a downhill run defender. That's where he's going to be at his best early. He's outstanding playing downhill in really every facet of the game. Instincts are lacking. Again, relatively new to this position, so when you put him at that off-ball linebacker spot, you can see instinctually his reads, very questionable. And this ties into being with impatient as well. But like I said, he sells out on things and he gets himself way out of position. And I think this and impatient kind of come together and collide as one. Sometimes he picks the wrong hole. Like if there's a read option, he'll pick the wrong player. You saw that a little bit as an edge as well. Sometimes he wouldn't set the edge extremely well. He'd get kind of sucked in. He gets sucked in pass coverage a little bit too, and we'll get to that. But instinctually, his reads as a run defender are very questionable at this time right now. Sometimes he makes the right decision and he's there and he blows up a play, but there's way too many occasions right now where that's not the case. And he gets himself out of position. He's impatient and he's in the wrong spot defensively. And then I would say avoiding blockers. This is an issue because he doesn't really avoid blockers. When you watch him, his length, strength, it allows him to disengage, but he doesn't really avoid blockers right now. He's not that agile. The burst is a little bit lacking, and one of the biggest weaknesses of his game as a whole is change of direction. His balance really suffers here. You can see him slip and fall. His change of direction is very questionable. I mean, sometimes better than others, but occasionally he'll slip and fall. It can be very slow, very choppy, and because of that, avoiding blockers, not really being the most swift on his feet, it can be difficult for him to avoid some of those blockers with agility. And because of that, he's constantly taking on offensive linemen, constantly taking on lead blockers. And he does have the disengage abilities, but it's not always going to work. So you can be pushed out of the play. You can be put in a bad position. A lot of it's just the position. It's the newness to that playing that role. I mean, honestly. And as an edge defender, he's a good run defender. But again, sometimes he does get caught inside. But he has all these traits that can make him a really good run defender. And he's going to be impactful. 54 tackles doesn't just happen. I mean, he can still be impactful. So it kind of tells you how high his ceiling is as a run defender, but yet still stacked up 54 total tackles in 6 games. It tells you how high this guy's ceiling can be because the motor's always running up pass rushing. Now, there's a couple of ways to look at this, okay? You can look at it from the inside linebacker position or you can look at it from the edge position. Looking at it from the inside linebacker position, as I mentioned, I think he's outstanding playing downhill. As a run defender, he can blow up plays. I mean, pass rushing downhill, he's great. He is built for an attacking defense, whether that's from inside or the edge position. He's built to attack. Pulling up guards in run plays. All right, this guy can throw you off your feet, and I was not expecting this, but he packs a punch like he's 280 pounds. Throw a highlight tape together of him just moving tackles backwards because of how hard that first punch and that first strike lands. So rushing from the inside against some of those guards with his speed, once he gets going downhill, even though the burst isn't incredible, he's still going to be much faster than offensive linemen because he does have speed. He has a great ability to run down plays, and that also goes back to run defending. Play on the opposite side, can run him down from behind, but he can run down things, but you're going to like him as a pass rusher a lot. Doesn't have a ton of pass rush moves, but he's long, he disengages, he can kind of punch and then swipe off, and he's really strong, so it makes it really difficult for offensive linemen to keep their hands on him, and he can get back to the quarterback. Now, his change of direction shows up a little bit here. Sometimes they'll whip on the quarterback if they get him with a good, sidestep out of the way, because he's not great at, kind of shifting back and forth and staying really balanced, so he'll kind of run by things, kind of like Jared Davis a little bit there, but he's a good tackler, so once he gets back there, he's good. Now, as an edge defender, as a pass rusher, the dude at 240 pounds, had 7.5 sacks in the Big Ten. He does it without having that many pass rush moves. There was no spins. There wasn't many swim moves. It was just kind of swipes, very long. So like I said, it helps him disengage a lot. But there was speed around the edge. There's bend around the edge. So you put him at edge, and that's probably what a lot of people thought that his role would be until Dan Campbell said he's going to play Mike for us. He could play that role. So on passing downs, while you may not be extremely comfortable right away for saying, okay, he can drop into coverage, you may just be willing to say, let's put him at edge. Let's put him at Sam. Let's put him at Jack. Let's get skin and let him get after the quarterback, and he can drop into coverage, and we can feel comfortable with him dropping into flats, dropping into short zone areas. As a pass rusher, he's built for an attacking defense, okay? He's not as much right now built for sitting back and waiting on things. He's built to get after it, and that's what the Lions defense should be next season. I expect that to be more of it next season, and he's going to fit in perfectly in those regards. You talk about his pass coverage. Now, his pass coverage is a little bit to be determined a little bit for me here. I didn't have every game, so unfortunately I didn't get to see all of his film, which kind of stinks, but there are things I like in pass coverage, but there's also some question marks, just things that I haven't seen yet. I have heard people knock him because he is only 6 foot, and that can be an issue. Definitely can be a man, trying to match up with tight ends that are 5, 6, 7 inches taller than you. That can be an issue. It definitely can. But I didn't really see him line up a man. I may have counted like on my hand the amount of times I saw him in man-to-man coverage. Even sometimes from the end position, he'll slide out. But for the most part, he just covered in zone. It was a zone coverage linebacker that dropped over the middle. I like his communication on drag routes. You can see really nice communication here to kind of point out things. I do like his zone coverage ability. Actually, statistically speaking, on 19 targets, he only gave up 13 receptions, a 60.6 passer rating, 1 interception, and 2 forced incompletions. In zone coverage, it's not a bad feel. It's just a change of direction is not great here. So when he's trying to follow quarterback size, working back and forth, it can get a little slow and it can leave holes open. And his height also doesn't make him scary presence for a quarterback over the middle because he can see over top of these linebackers. You got 6'7" tight ends running behind him. He doesn't get in the way of that. He doesn't clog passing lanes extremely well as a zone coverage guy. Then in man coverage, it's just all to be determined. I would believe that he would struggle there because his change of direction isn't great, because his height is questionable. But at the same time, I just don't really know. I really haven't seen that much, so it's hard for me to gauge that. But I can say that statistically speaking, I'm not surprised that his numbers are actually that good in coverage because it's not a bad field for zone coverage. He just lacks some of that change of direction, and it gets him out of position. His height isn't great. It's not like he was dropping 20 yards down the field consistently, but I mean, he dropped 10 yards into coverage, over the middle. So I don't dislike him in zone coverage. Limited right now in what you can do with him in coverage. It's limited how deep you can drop him. It's limited him trying to line up in man-to-man coverage. So those limitations could make it so that maybe we see him a little bit less on passing downs early in his career until he develops more into that. But I don't know completely because I don't know how he was in man coverage. I'm assuming there's a reason he didn't play a lot of man coverage because they kept him out of those situations as a good coach should. Hey, let's do what you do well. And that's what he does well. He's better in zone. So that's what his role was. That's the speed. The change of direction, though, is the biggest concern to me in coverage. That's something that needs to be better. It's just his balance is questionable. And this goes back to, as a run defender, instinctually, he's out of position way too often. Play action bootlegs. I mean, he gets sucked in because of that. He's out of spots. He does have that top end speed to run things down if he's in the wrong position, but lacking some of the burst and also getting himself out of spots, selling in on run plays, and then you have someone leak out and they already have a 5-yard head start. That puts him in a bad spot. It really does. So he's got to be more disciplined with his eyes to stay where he is, and I think he just needs more time playing that position. From the edge spot, he can drop it to the flats. He had a couple passive functions there. His length is a huge factor. So when you talk about playing man coverage, maybe that's something that actually gives him a big boost is that length, but in zone as well, not really expecting him to be able to reach a football that you throw his direction, but he can just go up and kind of smack it away. That's huge. His length definitely shows up there. So height is great, but sometimes it's a little bit like, oh, he's 6 foot, I can just throw it over him. Oh, snap, he just knocked it down. He's got long arms, and he can also do that from the edge position as well, and that's why he had 2 passes defended in 2019, because he can kind of just drop back and get his arms up, and he can knock away flats, and he can stay on the defensive line and put his arms up and time it correctly. Overall, after watching him play, I mean, there's a lot of things I understand the Lions like here, because I understand the mentality that he brings. They love the motor's always running. There's the length. There is just the raw physical power, which is just, it's kind of mind-blowing sometimes when you see what he's able to do. Run defender, he's getting after it. He's always attacking. His edge versatility also makes him very interesting as well, because while Dan Campbell said he played Mike now, things change. And then obviously injuries come up. You have to be able to move players around different pieces, things like that. In the 3-4 defense, we talked about this yesterday, if you want to know what the Mike role was going to look like for him. But specifically, the versatility is huge. So the ability to line up at edge and do it at a high level. He was actually arguably better at the edge position than he was at off ball. Because I think off ball, the thing is linebackers can transition because it's a lot of instinctual things. But the fact that he's just turning into this recently means that he's a little bit behind on that side of the game. So it's going to take time. But think about it, right? We hired Mark DeLone. That's what his job is supposed to be. His job is supposed to do that. So I think in terms of value-wise, for a 4th round pick, there are certain teachable things that he brings to the game. And there's also that energy, there's the motor, and that he brings to the table, which not all players in draft have. They just don't. Some guys don't bring that energy snap after snap after snap. You'll get him an attacking defense. You're playing downhill. You're playing to the style of a Dom Capers defense. If he's going downhill consistently, attacking as a run defender, he's going to miss some things, yes. He'll get better at it as time goes on. Letting him be a blitzer, okay? And hey, he can drop in short area situations. He's going to be fine. He's going to have an A1 impact. I see his role being an early down player. I think he's going to play the Mike role like Dan Campbell said because, that's what he said. But I could easily see him sliding the edge in certain situations, maybe certain games, certain matchups. Obvious passing downs, we may see a little bit less early because I think the Lions just have better options with Jamie Collins, with Alex Anzalone right now, Jalen Maben as well. I think those guys are all 3 better pass coverage options than Derrick Barnes is. But I think with time, that's where you got to see development. You got to see development there with time to maybe be that. He's going to have his lumps. You're going to see lumps, but you're also going to see flashes of brilliance, I think, from the linebacker position for him. And there's going to be plays that stick out to you like, whoa, how did he do that? And he's going to blow you away. If you have not watched this film, he's going to surprise you with how strong he really is. Balance is very questionable there. But again, I think some of that is also being new to the position. Moving back and forth. Edge, you're up and down, right? You're downhill. You're straight up and down field. Now you're moving more side to side in coverage. That's where he needs improvement there. And I think offseason work can help him a lot. So he'll improve in those areas. He's new to the position, but I think there's enough here that could warrant the Detroit Lions trading up. And I just love the fact that they did. They had an eye on somebody. They went and got him. They didn't just say, well, just wait. Just wait. Whoever's there will take somebody. No. This is the guy we want. We're going to go get him. And that's what they did. I see him serving a day 1 impact. I think he's going to play early downs at least. And I'm very excited for Derrick Barnes. So let me know your thoughts, comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.